So these metallic colors that you see here, I got those out of my local Dollar Tree. What I'm gonna do for the beginning of my project, I'm using 2 bottles of paint, and I will mix water with each cup of paint, but the amount of water that I'm going to mix, it'll just be 1/2 of a bottle after I've emptied each color into this solo cup. And that's going to help loosen up the paint for me and give me like a consistency where it's not going to be so stiff. The paint will loosen up a great deal, and you'll see the consistency that I'm going for there. Like, it's just not so thick, it's kind of liquefied in a sense. And now I'm going to introduce my epoxy resin. It's 2-part, A and B. And what you're going to see here is me mixing up each part. And I'm going to go for like almost a whole cup, but you'll see me mix a little of the epoxy resin into each one of my colors. And that will kind of help thicken up the paint a little bit, but not so much to the point of where it stiffens up. And what I recommend is that you wear gloves when you're dealing with epoxy resin, in addition to a face mask. The chemicals can kind of be strong at times, and if you're using these compounds in a closed-in environment, it definitely will have a toll on your respiratory system. So you want to make sure to protect yourself at all costs. In the area that I'm working, every window in the space is open, in addition to the doors. And I know you're not going to be able to see it in the video, but I have fans going to kind of like drive out the smell and break it up a little bit so it's not so strong, and so that it doesn't become unbearable while I'm working in the space. And once you put your A and B parts together, you want to thoroughly mix it. And I also want you to pay attention to what I'm doing. Each time I start on a new space, I'm going to follow the same A and B mixture for the epoxy. And you'll see that throughout the video. You're not going to see me come back and mix each time, but I just want you to pay attention that this basically is the steps that I follow each time I have a different space to work with. And I'm just going to pour a little of the epoxy resin in each one of these cups. This is a lot more inexpensive than having to deal with, say, your mica powders. Again, these metallic paints came out of the Dollar Tree. And so to stretch the paint, all I did, like you saw, was mix a little water with it. Now I'm mixing up the epoxy resin in each color cup. Now, introducing is our canvas. I've sanded this dresser down, so it's all ready to go. Here is the hardware that I'm going to be using, the knobs. I'm going to put a description in the box below, the link. Now, I color painted the dresser after I sanded it down. And the reason why is because wood is porous. So when you're going to use epoxy on top of wood, you want to make sure you have an underlay. So that was the reason for me painting. In addition to the paint that I use, it's going to be the outline color to the whole canvas or the dresser per se. And as you see, this is kind of the technique that I follow. I don't have any like fancy way of laying out the paint. You see, I'm just laying it out in stripes. But you'll see the way that I work it all throughout the video, which will create the design or the desired look that I'm going for. And the reason for the drawers being next to one another is because I kind of want a unified look per se, as much as possible. When you're dealing with pores like this, nothing is going to come out exactly the same. But as long as you use the same color and the technique is the same as you're pouring it on and starting to spread it out, as you see I'm doing here with this hair dryer, and I keep that hair dryer temperature on cool. But it helps me to kind of blend the paint together in a way so that it looks like an abstract sort of design without one color overbearing the other. And because I'm working with drawers rather than a actual canvas, you have to do it in an expedient amount of time. But here I just switched over to the top of the dresser because I didn't want to have you guys watching this video for hours while I went through each drawer. But you can see how I'm blending the colors using that blow dryer. The blow dryer is very helpful when you're trying to create a nice little, somewhat of a natural design mimicking a stone slab, so to speak. And on the edges, all I did was kind of drag the paint from the top, mixing it with the edges, and it's going to continue to drip as the drying process completes. But this way it helps the paint move if I just kind of manipulate it with my fingers. And here are the finished drawers. And this is the way the top of the dresser looks. And this is all prior to me applying a clear coat of epoxy resin. And you'll see that later in the video. Now what I've done was flip the dresser on its side because the sides of the dresser, I wanted those to have that sort of marble look, if you will, finish. So I'm doing the same pouring technique with the exception of kind of like zigzagging some of the paint. But you'll see how I create a design as I'm going through this process. And this is a very easy process. And I must say the drying time with each side, I allow each side, whether it be the sides, the drawers, or the very top. Me personally, I like 1 day drying time in between. That way I can make sure nothing is going to be disturbed. But as you see here, this is kind of the technique that I use on the top, on the drawers. I'm helping the paint to kind of be manipulated in a way so that it spreads out as much as possible over each section. And I don't want to do a whole lot of dragging. You can see some of the paint pouring I did not disturb. It's more so around the edges. But gravity is going to take its course, and you'll see this thing is going to end up the way that it decides to end up with the flow of the paint moving about. Once I'm done with kind of manipulating the areas, this is just to assure that I can kind of get a complete coverage throughout. course, you see my little Yorkie teacup Yorkie running around. You'll see her from time to time in the video, in addition to my little teacup Pomeranian. They may make their little cameo appearances from time to time throughout the video. And I put this on a time lapse because the video, I don't want it to be too long. I don't want people to kind of like skip through, of course, but if you're anything like me, I'm a person who really likes to get to the end result as quick as possible. Now, this is the result prior to me putting on that top clear epoxy coat. This is all after it dried. Now here, I'm about to put that top epoxy coat on. What I did was I took clear and just mixed in some white, small, fine flakes of glitter. But that glitter, you're going to see towards the end, it kind of adapts to the strongest color that I'm dealing with. It takes that color on. I don't know what that reason was, but that's what it did, and it really worked out for me. But this whole side, each side that I use the clear coating on top of, I cover completely. This is the before, now here's the after. And that's the top portion of the dresser. You see those flakes, they're very sparkly. All in all, I used 2.5 boxes of the epoxy resin, and I'll put the description of that resin down below. I ordered those from Amazon. Very cost effective. And I know I didn't show all of my technique as to how I got the raised look in some of the paint, in addition to the raised 3D effect on the outline. But if you follow my channel, you're for certain to see this in a future video, those 3D effects. Thanks for watching the video.